In this case, yeah, we're doing with True No Limit.
Mm-hmm.
We got a 5-10 game with a $20 under the gun straddle in effect here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about 6 hours into the session when this hand comes up,
Okay.
where I've got effectively 250 big blinds, right? So $5,000 in front of me, and the villain has me covered. The villain in question opens over the straddle to $75. He was, I think, under the gun making
Okay.
that. We're five-handed, and I three bet on the button with ace of clubs, queen of diamonds to 240.
So hero on button, ace of clubs, queen of diamonds to 240.
Correct.
And you're just playing five
Fold.
handed. Okay.
We're playing five-handed.
Yep.
Folds around to the villain, who then calls.
Okay.
So we're $515 to the flop,
Uh huh.
and that comes out the king of hearts, the queen of clubs, and the three of diamonds.
King of hearts, queen of clubs, three of diamonds, and hero has ace of clubs, queen of diamonds. So you've got second pair here, right?
Second pair.
Yep.
He goes ahead and checks, and I go for a $125 c bet.
Check 120. Okay.
125, and he calls.
125, I'm sorry. Check 125, call. Okay. So check 125, call. So this is similar to what I was saying before. I don't know if you caught the other caller before, where I would say, like, sort of older school times would say, well, this is sort of in between, right? You don't bet, you don't need protection, sort of like, you don't want to put yourself in like a spot where you're only getting called by better and folding out worse. But if you keep your sizing small, which obviously you did here, right? First of all, even if you were to call this a range bet, I think we can all agree, of course you can get called by worse if you go 125 into 515, right? With ace queen on king queen three.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm
So,
on board with that.
I mean, once you
I
start
know.
going to once you start doing like 4 or 500, then maybe that's not proper. Although I would say though too, which is kind of interesting, although he is gonna, I mean, you three bet him from under the gun, so it is five handed. But what I was gonna say is, like, if you're ring here, like, he's gonna be calling with kings and queens a lot to a tight configuration. Now I know it's five handed, so the point that I'm making is you can't just liberally go nuts because you're like, I have kings and queens and this guy doesn't. That's definitely not the case. Although here it's five handed. By the way, was there ever a thought of flatting or just too many blinds here? Because it's five handed. You're probably always going to three bet off pre, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty much
Yeah.
pure three betting
Yeah.
just because of the history and wanting
Yeah.
to isolate this particular player. The guys behind, I guess, is worth saying, relatively straightforward, tight aggressive type players who will just straightforward, go for a cold four bet
Right, right,
with
right.
a really tight range and probably fold vast majority of the rest. So I'm essentially playing heads up with a little bit of extra on the table.
Okay. All right. So 125 in call, and now that is what, 765, right? Something like that.
We're at 765
Yep. Okay.
to a queen of hearts on the turn.
Queen of hearts on the turn. So you trip up here.
Trip up, villain
Yep.
checks,
Okay.
and we go for a barrel for 450.
So 450 into 765. This is an interesting one because I do wonder how you sort of play across like other hands here, like what you're supposed to be doing if you want to be balanced, just kind of thinking out loud with other hands. Like, are you making this bet here with aces? Are you making this bet here with ace king? Are you making this bet here with kings? Are you making this bet here with jack 10? Are you making this bet here with ace jack and ace 10? Just kind of seeing how to play out. I don't know. Would you continue to bet here with ace king or aces on the turn?
Absolutely. Yeah, my plan for a decent amount of those hands is to go for the definite second barrel and evaluate river. In this case, of course, I'm kind of frothing at the mouth to get more chips in the middle.
So why would I rather have aces than ace king here and to bet this turn on king, queen, queen three?
You definitely want the villain to have a lot of his own king
Right,
X.
right, right. You want to
So you
unblock
want to
king
be
X.
blocking that.
Yeah. I just don't know how often you go here for 2/3 with ace king. That's just my question, because when you have a king, right, it's less likely that he has a king. So I'm kind of thinking out loud of how that's sort of reflected sometimes here, like with the sizing of your thick value hands. And you don't obviously always have to play balance, but it's just a thought that kind of popped into my head. But Okay, so you go 450 into 765. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good thought too. And before we move on to the river, I'll just say that my mindset against this fit villain for a couple hours now has just been very unbalanced, very value heavy. We've already gotten uh, caught bluffing. We've been going thin in a lot of spots and bluff catching.
Hmm.
So we're just sort of, playing more of a third level strategy against him and just trying to shovel the chips in when we get a value hand like this because we're
Yeah.
getting called really late.
Okay. So you go 450. Okay.
He goes in and calls that,
So call.
and so we go to a river with 1665 in the pot,
Yep.
and the river is a two of spades.
Pretty big brick here, right? If I'm not looking at, yeah, pretty. So it's king, queen, three, queen, deuce. Nothing comes in, right? You've got ace, queen, and you sort of giving this long background about how this guy is like sticky, right?
Sticky and uh, also seems to have a decent number of river leads,
Mm-hmm.
which makes this really interesting because he kind of takes a second, fondles his stack of $100 chips
Yep.
and leads out here for $1,000. And
Ah,
we've
that's
got
very
about
interesting.
uh,
This is a great spot. We don't get into this spot that much because you guys are deep, and I think we don't get into sort of higher stakes, sort of money wise calls, right? So you were going to say that you have what, like about 32 ish behind or something like that. Is that right?
roughly, yeah. We have about 4,000 in front of us actually, and so 3,000 on top of the 1,000 he's sort of betting out here.
So you could jam for like 38. So you could probably jam for four. Like if your jam would be what, like 40, excuse me, 35? Is that right? 35 total?
Closer to 4,000.
Closer to 4,000.
Yeah,
So it would probably be like a pot size bet, right?
right.
Pretty much. It would be a pot size bet. I mean, when you block king, queen here, I don't know if pocket kings is, oh, obviously you lose to threes. So, but then what are you trying to get value from here too? I mean, my first inclination is like, oh God, like I want to just shove, I want to shove, I want to shove. But then again, when you sort of look at it, it's like, how often is he going to have a queen in a given scenario here? Because you have, excuse me, a weaker queen, like really you're beating queen jack and queen 10, right? Those are the ones you want to get value from. Or if he was like defending with queen 9, let's just say, and I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but let's just say that he correctly only defends with suited queens here. So he doesn't have queen jack off. He doesn't have queen 10 off, okay? Because you have a queen and there are two on board, that only leaves one of each sort of combination of queen X suited. So queen jack suited, there's one combo and it's what, spades. Queen 10 suited, there's one combo and it's spades. That's only two hands. So again, let's just think about it and then we can extrapolate. So, maybe he's wider than this, but if you were really targeting saying like he's got queen jack and he has queen 10, that's two hands, right? Now, if he has all the sets, all the full house outs, that's three hands. And then maybe some like king, queen, like one or two, maybe the suited one, maybe he calls with like an offsuit one. And then maybe once in a while, he's got partials of kings played this way here too. And then ace queen, he's not folding. It's the same hand, right? Like all the ace queens off. I think what I'm trying to say is that if he is really playing a true reasonable range, where the only hands you're trying to get value from here are queen jack of spades and queen 10 of spades, I actually think that you'll find that there's actually more value on his side. You don't care about his bluffs, right? Because those are just going to fold. So on the surface, that's how I would look at it here, because I would take a step back and be like, oh man, I want to jam here, but if he really is only have queen jack of spades and queen 10 of spades, there's actually more value out here. Plus, he would have to take those hands for this line, which is maybe like a bit bizarre. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
And
Now, maybe you're thinking that he's going to call with something else.
yeah, actually, in my mind, I'm expanding that quite a bit to like
Mm-hmm.
almost every suited queen, just based on the history.
Every suited queen, like queen 5 from under the gun as a
Yeah,
defend.
he wasn't shying away from
Well,
putting
if
in
he if
one
he has
200 hand.
if he has queen 5 suited, then I assume that he has queen 10 off, right?
Right, right.
Well, so if he has those hands, then it's an easy shove, right? If he has those hands, then it's an easy shove. So I just wanted to get sort of like on board with the sort of thinking of it, because it's really just counting combos, right?
Right.
So what did you end up doing?
I did end up going for the all in, and he actually ironically tanked for a minute, made me feel great, and then he called it off with Queen King.
He tanked with king queen?
Yeah, he said I can't fold that. I thought you had King King here or something.
I just want you. What's your name here? If you is it Kevin? Kevin?
Kevin.
I just really want you to though sort of be hard on yourself in the sense that obviously I know that even just talking to you, you know how to play, but take a look in the mirror or when you review this hand, ask yourself, does he really have queen 5 suited here? Does he really have queen 10 and queen jack off? Because I think that sometimes we can get a little bit jaded by things that happen in the past and be like, oh, that guy's a maniac, right? And because it's a very large deviation for him to have those hands and then play it in this manner. And I think that sometimes as we get up to these levels, we can wash over some of these things where we might actually make maybe too many deviations in a given scenario.
I have a question for you that plays off of that pretty well, I think, which is earlier in the session, and the question is essentially how do you extrapolate recent history in situations like this? 'Cause
I think where people take it a little bit too far is they see somebody play loose, or, pre-flop or sort of sticky after the fact. But when people put a lot of money in, especially if they're not insanely maniacal, sort of towards the end of the hand, I think people revert back to the mean of that level, of that type of player, sort of the later the streak goes. And what I mean by that is that you might see somebody loose like pre-flop, but when they put in like the river raise or the river 3-bet, you can't say, oh, well, this guy called a raise with 5 deuce suited, so I'm going to call his like bet 3-bet on the river here because, an hour ago he called a raise with 5 deuce suited pre-flop. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the later that the hand goes. So, I mean, it's just tough to say, but I just wanted, like I said, I wanted to say like in a standard scenario, off the top, I'm like, ace queen, like this is great. But then when you really look at it, you have to like really say, yeah, he has to be very, very far out there in order to make that shove. I appreciate the call, Kevin, on short notice. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel and check out the coupon code in the description to try out the Crush Live Poker training site for free.